this is going to be an interesting one. It really is. Because it's not going to be a completely straightforward battle discussion. In fact, it can't be a completely straightforward battle discussion. For reasons that, well, honestly, there's not enough about it to surviving. We know it happened, we know it took place, we don't know much about it. Which is honestly normally something I'd be omitting about a battle which took place 2,000 years ago, not 223 years ago, give or take. I'm recording this on the 16th of June. It starts on the 17th of June. It finishes on the 18th of June. And that's when we sort of date the battle to. Because that's when the actual fighting takes place. Prior to that, it's mostly chase. And the first thing that comes to mind whenever I start reading accounts of this operation is everything is just so run of the mill. The reason they don't write down much about it is because the French came across a fleet. The fleet sent off a squadron. The squadron ran them down. One of the most notable things about it is the fact that that squadron is currently absent Lord Nelson, but it's under the command of Lord Keith, who is by no means a dulwart, fairly efficient and competent at his job. And if Nelson had been there, Nelson would have been one of his juniors, but he was off playing Fidaglio in Naples, so he's not there. So I know Fidaglio, but Fidaglio sounded better cooler to say for that phrase. Anyway, this is the action of the 18th of June, 1799. How to lose frigates and influence, because this is when France goes from having something semblance of Mediterranean policy, and admittedly that's a Mediterranean policy post the Battle of the Nile, so there isn't really much there to have a policy with, to having, we now have a British lake. And there's even the much vaunted thing of Napoleon, who gets back to France on a single corvette, and it's amazing. It's a great thing of feat of French naval arms. Everyone's fairly certain Sir Sidney Smith was involved in this, and he's also involved in this one because he gives chase to his squadron, and they go chasing along, so they don't get to resupply, and then they get close to Toulon, and well, yeah, life is just not good. Life is just not good in 1799 if you're French Navy. It really isn't good. But the thing about this battle, despite it being so little written about, our understanding of it is just so basic, and I do realise there are French sources which like to wax lyrical about it. But there's a problem I have with those French sources when I read the little information is written in English sources, which is the English sources are fairly straightforward. They struck. The French sources go, they show a land, da 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 da, and you sort of go, I can understand this. I can understand why you're writing it this way. But we're going to look at this battle, and you're going to see whether you think they should have struck as quickly as they did. Frankly, I'm on the side of, holy guacamole, that's a lot of firepower coming my way. I think as I'm quite so massively outgunned, this might not be the sensible idea for me. Now, the War of the Second Coalition, technically the second phase of the French Revolutionary Wars, before you get to Napoleonic Wars, because remember, Napoleon hasn't got home and made himself first consul yet. Yay. Is, well, how do I put this politely? It's the second war for revolutionary France, and basically they have Britain, Austria, and Russia ganging up on them, with the Ottomans, the Portuguese, Naples, and various German monarchies, though interesting enough, not Prussia, siding with them. Spain sides with the French. This turns out to be not a very good position for the Spanish. I mean, honestly, it really turns out to be not a very good position for the Spanish. Allying with the French always seems to be a bad bet for the Spanish. Not sure why, but it doesn't turn out good. Now, France managed to do quite successfully on land. I have to admit they do a very good job of fighting on land. But they have a small problem with fighting at sea. And we'll see this as we go through the discussions. This is not least the Battle of the Nile, which in many ways is the victory which, to an extent, Trafalgar is built upon. Because you do what you do at the Nile, and then you do what you do at Trafalgar. And combined with the other earlier battles, that's why Trafalgar happens. The mistake often made about the Battle of Trafalgar is that this is a glorious battle between equals. It isn't. The French and the Spanish fleets have lost their experienced officers. Even their officers with them who are experienced haven't been able to spend time at sea training their ships and training their crews because they've been blockaded. So you've got a very experienced, very skilled ships versus forces which have consistently been losing their institutional memory time and time again in repeated actions every time they've tried to build it up. I've said in many videos, I've discussed many lectures, and many times I talk about the cumulative effect of conflict. How early victories, apparently small victories, can have a massive impact on the overall course of the war because of the cumulative impact of this. In World War II, the losses of Courageous and Glorious have a cumulative impact on British forces operations throughout World War II. The losses of the damage to the battle fleet, but more importantly to the limitations on tanker deployments of Pearl Harbor, has an impact on how the US Navy fights World War II. Well, it's the same when you scale it back to the age of sail. You lose that experience. It's not just the admirals and the captains you lose. It's the lieutenants, it's the midshipmen, it's the petty officers, it's the pursers, it's all the people who know the various phases of how to run a fleet. The pursers are pretty much your logisticians, right? Without them, you ain't gonna get a fleet to sea. You are not. So if you're busy killing off the ones which are too bourgeoisie rich and losing any ones who happen to be at sea and get caught in the wrong place in a battle, you suddenly have lost a lot of your skilled personnel at putting and outfitting your fleet to sea. If it takes longer to get your fleet ready to go to sea, the opportunities for them to go to sea are less. It makes the blockading job easier. Anything which makes the blockading job easier makes it more successful. Anything that makes it more successful further reduces your chances for going to sea, which further reduces your chance of getting sea time and sea experience. People who exist on land do not become sailors just by virtue of being on a ship. I have this experience almost every summer when I get friends who decide they're going to hire a sailboat. I would never call myself a sailor. There are people who are far more skilled than that. But I've spent enough time with them to know enough to know what I don't know and to be an able sort of person to assist them. But almost every year, I find friends video calling me from various sailboats they have hired, even in the lovely Mediterranean, going, I'm in trouble. What do I do? And I'm going, I don't know, but I have a number for you to call. It takes time, and that's peacetime, just doing it on your own half in the Mediterranean. That's not a complicated sailing ship like one of those beasts. Now, this is going to sound strange though, because the Mediterranean campaign starts off so well. Bonaparte goes out with his plan, he takes Malta, he beats up the Knights of St. John, he wanders around the ocean and ends up in Egypt. It's brilliant. He gets there. Wonderful. You're in Egypt. By the way, Malta, let's be honest, it's an interesting victory point, but in the Age of Sail, it's less a victory point if you control other islands. And to be fair, Malta, as I've discussed before, becomes a very inhospitable place for the French. And actually, with the help of the British, ends up causing them a lot of harm. And is to this day why. Let's put it this way: French Knights Hospitaller tends, in my experience, whenever I've been around the Knights Hospitaller, have to be working very hard because it's remembered that the French ones decided to sign it with Bonaparte. Although I'd say the modern ones are pretty darn good and pretty cool. Anyway, leaving that to one side, the Mediterranean campaign had been a great example of strategic maneuver of amphibious forces. That they hadn't been caught at sea is mostly due to a bit of luck and a bit of judgment, as it is in most war fighting. Again, if you ever admit quite how much comes down to luck, no politician would ever actually wage war. In fact, as a rule, they only wage war when they believe that they have managed to eliminate luck as a factor. Ah, those sweet summer children. But no, all this adds up to a very complicated environment. And then we have what will be the action of the 18th of June. Well, by this point, the French are in Egypt. The Battle of Nile has taken place, and all Bonaparte is really left with is some frigates and a whole load of sailors, which Nelson decided that, frankly, I can't be bothered to feed all these prisoners, so you can have them. Which gave Napoleon the interesting issue of dealing with a whole load of people who really don't like land conflict because they've learnt to go sailing everywhere, who like to climb up and down rigging and fire big guns, but are really not trained that well in, I don't know how to put this, rifle drill or infantry tactics. And you don't have the equipment for it, but hey ho. What does he do with those sailors? Well, he puts some into a flotilla of xebecs and galleys on the Nile, which makes them oh so happy. He uses the frigates that do remain to assist the army. They can do shore bombardment. They're 18-pounder long guns, were equivalent of the heavy siege pieces in the army. Remember, these are 18-pounder guns, are the equivalent of the heavy siege pieces in the army. In naval terms at this time, they're sort of considered, oh, well, they're good for a frigate. It's an 18-pounder. That's a nice gun. Good for a frigate. Remember that. And the fact is, even the squadron as it is, which is under a gentleman called Contre Admiral Pierre, or Rear Admiral Pierre, who's in charge of, well, 3 frigates and 2 brigs. The frigates, Yonon, Courageous, Alceste, and Salamine and Elliot, which are commanded by Commander Poquier. Courageous is under Captain Trullet. Alceste, Captain Barret. Salamine is under Lieutenant Landry. And Elliot is under Demar. They spend their time wandering around between the Nile and Jaffa. They took cargo to Jaffa quite a lot and landed their ammunition and to support the army, which left them with only 15 shots per gun. You've all seen how quickly those cannon can be reloaded and fired. 15 shots per gun. Junon also landed 4 of her 18-pounder long guns. They took part in the siege of Acre. But on the 14th of May, they spotted 2 enemy ships of the line and a frigate. This force was under the command of the redoubtable Sir Sidney Smith. Always nice to know he turns up. And, well, the frigates decided that they really didn't have the firepower to take on a ship of the line. Not 2 of them in a frigate. And despite having orders not to go to Europe unless it was unavoidable, Pere, well, basically had enough. Honestly, he's running low on supplies. He's got no ammunition. There's no chance of him getting ammunition where he is. He's running low on water. It doesn't take much for his officers and him conferring to decide, we're going to go to Europe, and sorry, Bonaparte, we're deserting you. We need to go back for supplies. And so he decides to return to Toulon via Lampedusa. The plan being to replenish water there. But this is the big thing. This is what had happened on the 18th of June, 1799. This is what we're building up for. We're building up to a battle. It's not going to be a massive battle. It really isn't. You've just heard one side has 15 rounds per gun, and they've landed some of their guns. They've already fled from a force of 2 ships of the line and a single frigate. This is not going to be good. It's a small force. It's a cruising force. And it's been tied down rather than allowed to go cruising to support the army. Which is fine. But if you're going to be tied down supporting the army, you're going to be able to be found. And if you're able to be found, you need something that can provide you enough firepower to get you out of problems. He doesn't have it. And honestly, the moment Sir Sidney turns up with those ships, there is now more force in the area than they can possibly deal with. And by the way, those ships do really cause trouble for the French in their sieges. They do, because Pierre doesn't have enough force to fight it off. Now, Jean-Baptiste is not a minor officer. He had done commerce raiding on the Proserpine. He serves in the Navy, well, let's put it this way. He was born in 1761, 19th of December, so a good day to be born. He officially serves in the Navy from 1793 to 1800. Which is kind of an interesting thing, but that's because he spends most of his life in the merchant navy. So he manages to go 29 years, roughly. Let's say 28 years. And most of that time of his service, because he goes to sea as a boy, 12, under his command of his father on the Merchant Glorious, fights in the merchant navy. He earns his commission as sea captain in 1785. He is an experienced officer. But if we consider that we are talking 1799, he is a contre-admiral, a rear admiral. And in 1793, he only just joined the Navy. He commands a frigate in the Inclusive Action on the 22nd of October 1793, fighting against the then Captain Horatio Nelson. He becomes a lieutenant in 1794, takes command of the frigate Proserpine to conduct commerce raiding. He's made captain in 1794, in September 1794. He goes through a range of ships, a range of squadrons. But this is an officer who you're very lucky to have, because he's actually quite a good officer. But he's also been rapidly promoted and is not from the naval experience. He's from the merchant navy, which shows just how much damage has been done to the navy through the years of fighting and the Revolutionary Wars and the various decisions of the kings as well. Before it, there is the amazing decision that's made a few decades earlier to get rid of the Huguenots and the Protestants from the Navy when they were a critical force of officers. And by the way, where did those officers mostly go to? Hello, thank you. Welcome to Britain. Would you like to join the Royal Navy? You would. Oh, good. We can add your experience to our own. We aren't the Borg. We're far scarier. We're the British Empire. The Borg are mythical. We were real. Then there is Admiral George Elphiston, aka the first Viscount Keith, who is also a pretty cool officer. And as said, very experienced. Had fought in the 7 Years' War, the American Revolutionary War, the French Revolutionary War, of course, and will fight in the Napoleonic Wars. He had a few daughters. His first wife was Jane Mercer, who he had a daughter by, and his second wife was Hester Frail, who he also had a daughter by. And his Viscounty ends when he dies, but his British and Irish baronies descended to his eldest daughter, Margaret, who married the Comte de Fernand de la Bellandry, but it became extinct on her death. He and his wife, Queenie, of course, appear many, many times in the Patrick O'Brien's Aubrey Motion series, and is a pretty cool officer. Now, before we get into the ships, let's consider Captain John Markham, who will, of course, go on to become an admiral. He is the commander of the squadron that will face off against Jean-Baptiste Pierre. Let's consider him. He had been born in 1761 as well. But he was born in June, not December, and on the 13th. He would live till February 1827, and he'd served in the Royal Navy from 1775. So he'd served in the Royal Navy from 14 years old. He didn't start off... He started off 2 years later than Baptiste, but he serves his entire time in the Navy as a naval officer, learning the naval experience and how to fight ships. He goes on to become the rank of admiral. He will take part in the American Revolutionary War, the French Revolutionary Wars, Napoleonic Wars. He'll also be MP for Portsmouth. He has an extensive commission. He even serves as First Naval Lord under Earl St. Vincent. Now that must have been a fun assignment. So, he is not someone who you would count out in any fight. He's experienced, and this is the point. This is a battle between experienced officers, but this one is an experienced naval officer. This is a merchant officer who's had to become experienced in naval fighting very quickly because he had enough sea background that he could actually do the navigating, so he needed to learn how to do the fighting. But I think it's kind of interesting in that I can imagine if you turned around to this officer and told him, you will land all but 15 shots per gun for your ships, and then you will still stay on duty providing fire support, so you're aware those got a shot and your number of shots down even more. He might well have had either a navigational error or have had an accounting error in how many shots per gun were landed. This one did his duty by the letter. That one's a spirit officer. So, this is one of the frigates involved, the Junon. Now, I have to say, the ships involved are cool and interesting, but they're also... How do I put this politely? They have varying levels of information provided about them. To the extent that one of them doesn't have a Wikipedia page at all, which is cool, because it's rare I find the ships which don't have Wikipedia pages, especially when they've been involved in actions. But it's actually got a very really cool backstory. So I've been searching not just English-speaking Wikipedia, but Spanish-speaking Wikipedia, every version, to try and track down decent pictures of it that I could use on here. I've been going through various books, all the books in my collection on Age of Sail, and so far I have found absolutely nothing. Absolutely frigating all, in fact, on this little frigate. But I'm still hunting, so expect someday there to be a special done on the Santa Teresa. Even if I have to go to Spain to track down information on it in Spain myself, I will be heading there. I have enough friends in Portugal, I can go visit them, and then I can travel into Spain. And I will go and travel to the yards where she was built and see if they have records, because she is cool. She's called HMS Santa Teresa, and as far as I know, she's the only one called that in the entire Royal Navy history. And I want to track it down. But this is Yunnan, as you know. And, well, she's a special ship. She, of course, ends up becoming HMS Princess Charlotte. And also, I think, at a certain point, she changes name to become HMS Andromache as well. But it's quite interesting to note she's named Princess Charlotte because Lord Keith's flagship at this point is the Queen Charlotte, if I remember correctly. So when they commission her, basically he goes, need a name for this frigate. My ship's Queen. She must have been called Princess Charlotte at one point. She'll be named in honor of the Queen. I like her. So basically, it's a case of we're going to name this frigate in honor of the big ship that the Admiral's in charge of. It works. She is rough a Minerva class, which is fairly decent class frigate. Roughly displacement, roughly 700 tons. In French service, she had 28 18-pounder long guns and 12 8-pounder long guns. Now, remember, she'd landed at least 4 of those to assist the army. So by the time she gets into this battle, she has only 24. So, you know, she takes part in several operations during her life. Far more of them with the Royal Navy than she does with the French. Okay, she is ordered in 1781. She's laid down in 1782. She's launched in 1782, but she's not commissioned until 1786, which shows you some of the issues the French were having at the time. And, well, she's captured in 1799. So she'd been in service with the French for 13 years. But then she gets turned over by the Royal Navy. And the Royal Navy also renamed her to Armagh in 1812, so it started 13 years of service. She's not broken up till 1828. So the Royal Navy keep hold of her for 29 years, and the Royal Navy use her hard. She's a good ship. They like her. She'll actually be scripted again to serve under Lord Keith in 1812. So he takes her. She's one of the ships which actually really impresses him, and he uses her a lot whenever he can get the chance because he likes her lines. He describes her as a beautiful fusion of British and French construction at one point, which was a very cute line I found. I'm not quite sure if it's true because it comes from one of those sources which, how do I put this? As a historian, there are sources which you sort of go, you're adapting from Old English for starters, and you do occasionally take license. But sometimes I like your phraseology so that I will use you, even without cross-checking you, just because it sounds cool. But I'm going to say this, that as I always do when I discuss these sort of sources on here, it's not one I place a lot of faith in and I put in an actual academic book. It's one I can put on here with codicils. Now, HMS Centaur. Now, I've already discussed her a few times because, well, she was part of the Diamond Rock of Martinique. This is the sort of ship we're dealing with. She has an interesting career. To be fair, it's Markham is a fairly good commander for her. He does a lot of fun. She's a Mars class ship of the line, 74 gun, third rate, 1,842 tons Bertham, roughly. Her armament: 28 32-pounder guns, 30 24-pounder guns, 12 9-pounder guns in the quarterdeck, and 4 9-pounder guns in the forecastle. You notice what there's a distinct lack of? 18-pounders. And definitely at no point is anyone going, so you're only going to have 15 shots per gun. See, the Royal Navy does have a habit of helping out the army and shipping a lot of ammunition and guns ashore to help them. But it's a case of, okay, so if we're giving you 4 guns, we'll give you the ammunition for those 4 guns, but you ain't getting the ammunition for the rest of the guns. So you're starting to see how things are evening out. The French, well, have Courageous, which is the same class as this vessel, which has been beautifully reconstructed. This is Hermione, which was reconstructed not that long ago, and is a beautiful reconstruction of a French period vessel at this point. Now, she's a Concorde class, and they are famously at the 12-pounder frigates. So they had 26 12-pounder guns on their upper deck and 6 6-pounder guns. 12-pounder guns. Okay. All right. But she is rather beautiful, and this ship has been built to her lines because she was Concorde class, and this is the new Hermione. This is built in Rochefort in 1997, launched, well, they began the construction in 1997, they launched in 2012, so it took them 15 years to build. And if you ever see her sailing around, go see her. She is beautiful. Really, really well done. I am massively impressed with the quality of construction. I would also say go to her Wikipedia page because you will see some beautiful pictures of the construction. And yeah, she's just glorious. And she was welcomed into US waters by USS Mitchell, so, which I found quite cool. This is HMS Bellona. Now, Bellona is another of the Royal Navy's third gates, but she is a Bellona class 74-gun ship of the line. And yeah, she'd taken part in an action off Cape Finisterre and various other operations. She is pretty much sisters with Arrogant, Ramillies, Egmont, and Elizabeth classes, because to an extent, Sir Thomas Slade basically uses her as the prototype for the 74-gun ships. So you can't really get more 74-gun than Bellona. And again, armed with 28 32-pounders on the lower deck, 28 18-pounders on the upper deck, and 14 9-pounders on the quarterdeck, and 4 9-pounders on the forecastle. So she's got some 18-pounders in there. But she also has a disturbingly large number of 32-pounders if you're a frigate in this fight. It's kind of a case of, you have 18-pounders! Yay! I can match into you! You carry 32-pounders. I would like to be not here right now. In fact, I would prefer to be that way, or that way, or that way, or that way. But not here. Not here at all. Then we have Alceste. Now, again, this is another magazine class, which are pretty cool little ships. Again, the Royal Navy quite like capturing them. This one managed to go France, Kingdom of Sardinia, then France again, then the UK. It's nice to have be fought over, I suppose. She's ordered in 1780, laid down in 1780, launched in 1780, commissioned in 1781. Tells you pretty much all you need to know about her size by the speed of her construction. And she's armed with 26 12-pounder long guns and, well, six-pounder long guns. So again, she's an honourable mention in this upcoming fight. She's an honourable mention, really. She does deserve to be mentioned. Uh, she will actually end up, it's rather appropriate, her coming after Bellona, because that's who comes up against her. So, Bellona, meet your prey. Then there's HMS Captain. Yes, you will have heard of this ship. This ship has had some very interesting commanders and has been used by, well, Horatio Nelson, of course, and, well, in this case, pictured here doing her painted boarding of first rates. And during this battle, she's under the command of, I think, Sir Richard Strachan from my notes. But there is a sort of interesting sort of thing of when she comes back in service, of course, after being repaired after this particular battle, and etc. And she's no longer Nelson's ship. There are some interesting things about who's exactly in command of her when they arrive and all those things. So I'm going with Sir Richard Strachan, but I could well be wrong on that one. I am hunting through my notes on that one. But again, she takes part in the battle and does well. Again, another third rate you don't really want to take on. And again, lowered gun deck, 28 32-pounders. Upper gun deck, 28 18-pounders. Quarter deck, 14 9-pounders. Forecastle, 4 9-pounders. All long guns. Yeah, it's those 32-pounders that really make you feel at home. Then there is Salami. Now, originally, Spanish. I know lots of details, but it's, again, no picture of her. She starts off as the Infante, captured from the Spanish in December 1793. Renamed the Salamine in honor of the Battle of Salamis in May 1798, because the Battle of Salamis is well known as being one of those battles which really sets apart French naval capabilities. Described nicely as an 18-gun brig with 18 6-pounders. Displacement 350 tons or 240 tons burthen. She's an interesting vessel. She is a really interesting vessel. And as usual, my notes are there on the big screen. Just in case anyone's wondering why occasionally I'm staring that way, I'm doing the dyslexic thing of checking my notes. HMS Emerald. Now, isn't she cute? And she's the last ship I have an actual design for. She's, well, ordered 1794, laid down 1794, launched 1795, and commissioned 1795. Won't be broken up till January 1836. Is an Amazon class frigate. Rather appropriate name for a Royal Navy frigates, Amazon class. Gun deck, 26 18-pounder guns. Quarter deck, 8 9-pounder guns, and 6 32-pounder carronades. Forecastle, 2 9-pounder guns, 2 32-pounder carronades. This is not a ship you really want to fight if you're a fellow frigate. Emerald is one of those ships which just has a career. I mean, she's part of the action on 26th April 1797. She's part of the bombardments of Cadiz. She takes place in the part of the attack on Santa Cruz. She does duties off Alexandria, as well as the 18th of June. She'll also take part in the 7th of April 1800. Um, takes part in the capture of Suriname. Serves on the home station. Takes part in the Apros incident. Issue. Uh, does duty off Basque Road, including a battle there, and does all sorts of weird and wonderful service. Basically, this is a frigate which it typifies a cruising frigate. If you need a frigate, oh, hello, Emerald, you're here. That's good. I was just conjuring in my mind the image of the perfect frigate for naval operations, and you're here. Cute. Carry on. And then there is the alert. Now, the alerts. How do I describe the alerts? Okay, well, it's another brig. It's 330 tons, or 248 tons burthen. And there is a dispute over what guns it's actually carrying at the battle. We presume 14 6-pounders at time of capture. But there is an argument there might have been a 4-pounder wandering around there. She had already been captured by the British at least once before, when she began with 10 4-pounder guns in 1793, and then, well, the British had misused her rather horribly, including burning her, but the French decided to salvage her and rebuild her and put her back into service, and a few years later she's captured again. You know, life happens when you're having fun. Right, and then there's this one, British HMS Santa Teresa. Now, Santa Teresa is captured by the British in February 1799. There is very little record about this ship. I have managed to find two websites which have discussed her and over, neither of which have a picture. I have managed to find her mentioned in one book, which also doesn't have a picture, or anything really qualitative in there. But we know she was a small ship, but she was a decent-sized frigate, a very capable frigate. And, well, I thought she's proves very useful, but she's not the only way the Spanish proved useful to this campaign. For example, Sir John Markham, that's the captain in charge of this squadron, the British squadron, had earlier written, whilst under the command of Admiral St. Vincent, blockading Cadiz, so confident we are in the integrity of these poor Spaniards that the officers have, by their means and their linen, got their linen washed in the town, received fresh beef, mutton, fowls, eggs, and vegetables from Portugal and Tangiers. That's a quote from Nicholas Rogers' book. It's a good time when you can order food and your washing done by your enemy who you're technically blockading. Well, who you are blockading, no technical about it. It's very successfully. So, that is the various fleets and their capabilities. And by the way, I have now been joined by a fluffy research assistant who may make himself known at certain points. Just to give you a heads up before any of you get surprised by a big fluff coming out of somewhere on my side. So here is how the London Gazette writes this up. And I always find this kind of interesting because there are various sources you can put together. But this is the London Gazette write-up. Extract of another letter from Earl St. Vincent, KB, to Evan Neppen, Esquire, dated at Port Mahon, the 22nd of June, 1799. You will herewith receive, for the information of the Lords Commissioners of the Admiralty, a letter from the Vice Admiral Lord Keith, enclosing one from Captain Markham, of His Majesty's ship Censure, giving an account of the capture of a squadron of French frigates which have made their escape from Alexandria. Queen Charlotte, at sea, June 19, 1799. Yes, that is Keith's flagship. My lord, I have the honour to inform your lordship of the capture of the French 5 French vessels by the squadron under my command, and to enclose your lordship Captain Markham's letter, whose ship was more advanced and whose whose conduct on this occasion, as on all others, has been exemplary. I have the honour to be yours sincerely, Keith. Censure, June 19th, 1799. My lord, I have the honour to inform you that, pursuant to your signal on yesterday for a general chase to the northeast, I came upon and with and captured 3 frigates in the evening of this day. The Bellona and Santa Teresa frigate being nearest when the 2 stern stuck, I made their signals to take possession of them, whilst I pursued a third, which struck also in an hour afterwards. The Emerald, in the meantime, took the Salaming brig and the captain the Alert. The squadron was commanded by Rear Admiral Pierre, 33 days from Jaffa, bound to Toulon. For their names and force, I beg leave to refer you to the list. I have the honour to be J. Markham. Vice Admiral Lord Keith, and this is the list. La Toulon, Rear Admiral Pierre Procure, Captain, 40 guns, 18-pounders, 500 men. La Courageuse, Bill, Captain, 22 guns, 12-pounders, 300 men. La Ceste, Barret, Captain, 36 guns, 12-pounders, 300 men. La Salamine, Brig, Sandry, Lieutenant, 18 guns, 6-pounders, 120 men. Leat, Brig, Dumay, Lieutenant, 14 guns, 6-pounders, 120 men. It's just so perfunctory. It's so straightforward, and yet here is, from various sources, including the French ones, what I can piece together. So, they were roughly, and I say roughly, 5 hours or less sailing time from safety if they were getting best speed, which they probably weren't getting at this point, so they could have been 6 to 7, maybe even 8 hours, more likely. But 60 miles from Toulon is the rough range, and roughly the ships, when we consider what speed they can average, yeah, they would have been less than a day's sailing. So I would say 8 hours, roughly, from Toulon, from safety. When they're spotted by the fleet of Lord Keith, which, remember, has roughly 30 ships in it. The task force is separated off. Now, Keith doesn't have that many admirals with him, so he's using captains as commodores. Markham is the senior captain, Censure is an experienced ship. He is the closest, so with his 2 ships of the line and 2 frigates, separates and goes to give chase. So you had this force run from a squadron under Smith, which was 2 ships of the line and a single frigate. Now they got 3 ships of the line and 2 frigates hunting them down. Okay, the numbers are 1 to 1, but in reality, your 3 frigates are going, hang on, so we've got a match in versus a third rate. Okay. And the brigs are going, those are full-size frigates. Excuse me, sir, we have 6-pounder guns, or 4-pounders, possibly, depending on your exact maths. Could we please have our money back? Maybe return on the tickets? The wind was blowing very weakly from the southwest at this point. It was very weak from the southwest. So the chase lasted 28 hours. Now that's got to be something quite cool. Just think about what they did to keep going. They kept chasing them all night. 28 hours. And it's not until next evening that the 2 groups come into contact. So it starts on the 17th, today, when this goes live. And it actually finishes on the 18th, when I'm actually doing the live on this. At roughly 7 o'clock in the evening, the Bellona, which is under the command of Thompson, closely followed by captain and the 2 frigates, that's Santa Teresa and Emerald, came within quarter mile of Yunnan. Bellona opens fire. Yunnan and Alceste immediately strike. They basically go, right then, we're not fighting this. And you have to remember, the French squadron has broken up quite dramatically. So Yunnan Alceste are together, and that's the rear admiral. That's the contra-admiral. Immediately strikes. There is no chance of winning this fight. He strikes his colours. Immediately they start firing. Basically, it's I'm going to give you chase to see chase to see if you can get away. If I can get away, then it's fine. I have no idea where I'm going, but I'm going to try and run away. And if I can't run away, then I'm going to wait till you fire on me. Then I've done everything that satisfies honour. I've tried to run away, and I've waited till you fired on me before I strike. So I've done everything for honour, which is important because he knows he'll face a court martial at some point. Courageous is 1 mile away from them further on, and Salamine and Alert are between 4 and 7 miles ahead of Yunnan. Unfortunately for them, so Censure carries on. Basically, Markham does a keep and goes, right then, you deal with those, I'm going after you. And Courageous is going, I'm going to get away, I'm going to get away, I'm going to get away. Nope. And Courageous comes under attack by Censure. Courageous tries to fight on. And then Bellona comes along and goes, hello. Courageous, at which point goes, 274s versus me, 274s versus me. Those are a lot of 32-pounders. 274s versus me. I'm striking my colours now. And a little while later, Salamine gets overhauled by Emerald, who goes, hello. I would like to talk to you about your future service in the Royal Navy and how we might benefit you with our, what we call, employment upgrade program. And then poor Alert has the biggest shock of the night, because Alert's going, I might get away, I might get away, I might get away, further away. And it's Captain, which comes romping up at full sail, every single piece of canvas, every single piece of everything it can to make sail. They are probably attaching things pieces of clothing to try and get extra sails to give them as maximum speed from their little wind as they can. Comes romping up, overtakes them, and it's a case of I choose life, and they strike at 11:30 at night. So the actual battle lasts for longer than Lival, 4.5 hours. Think about that. Now, Lloyd's List reports that they had captured all these ships, and of course, they lists it as 36 guns in terms of. Lloyd's List listed as the Alcestis are being captured with 36 guns and 460 men. Juno, 44 guns and 560 men. Courageous, 44 guns and 500 men. And the 2 corvettes both being listed as having 16 guns each. So there is some dispute here between the Lloyd's figures, which are also provided at the time, and the London Gazette figures, which are provided by the Royal Navy at the time. Which is fun, because Courageous is listed as 44 guns, 500 men in the Lloyd's List, but is listed differently in the London Gazette. So, why is this video entitled "How to Lose Frigates and Influence"? This is why. These figures come from my lovely Richard Harding book, which I always enjoy getting out. Now, in it, he makes a very interesting point where he starts dividing up Age of Sail ships into battleships and cruisers. And honestly, my figuring of it is that cruisers for him are anything which is a 4th rate and below, and battleships are anything which are a 3rd rate and above. But I'm not 100% sure. That's my own description on it, because otherwise I'm going to get shouted at by people on the internet going, they didn't have battleships and they didn't have cruisers in this period. They had cruising ships, and ships line of battle. So basically, at this point, I would call third rates line of battle, and fourth rates and below cruisers. It's a rough grouping, which gives you a rough idea. It's okay for the strategic thing overview. It's not okay for the precision stuff. But you get the sort of figure. In 1790, the British have 130 cruisers, 130 battleships, and 260 total. This is France and the Allies. The French peak in 1796 were 144 cruisers. By 1800, they're down to 90. British peak with roughly 160 in 1796, but maintain 158, 160, maintain in that region from 1796 onwards to 1805. The battleships, the third rates and above, at several points the French are very close to them. They're even ahead of them. But the thing is, the British always have enough. But the French never have enough. Their allies never have enough frigates. This is the closest time when they come in frigate numbers is 1796. So why is 1799 important? Because they lose 5 ships in one go. And it's not just 5 ships, they lose 5 crews. And yes, it's a peace agreed in 1802 and all sorts of things. But the fact is, you lose 5 ships in one go. When you can't afford to lose them, that's going to be a factor in those numbers. 5 in one go. So, summary. Well, let's consider the results of the battle. Pierre is taken prisoner, is almost exchanged almost immediately, because frankly, a contra-admiral is not that much value to the Royal Navy, because he ain't got ships to command. What they're keen in trying to keep hold of are navigators and junior officers who are being trained up, because there's no point having a load of senior officers if you have no one who's worthwhile. And then the French regime are usually so helpful in that they don't place any value in the junior officers. It's brilliant. And certainly not in the petty officers and sailors. Oh, beautiful. This means that between the 6th of October and 25th of November, Pierre Perry undergoes a court-martial, presided over by Vice Admiral Finvard. The court decides that due to superior Ottoman British force of Syria, the partial disarmament of the frigates, their low food and water supplies, there had all been legitimate reasons for Pierre Perry to try to return to Toulon, and they honourably acquit him for what happens. Nice. The British, of course, take on Yunnan, and she becomes Princess Charlotte, but courageous, becomes incorporated, then becomes a prison hulk, either Minorca or more likely Malta. Alceste became the floating battery. Alert became HMS Minorca. Salamine became HMS Salamine and served the Mediterranean, where she actually captures some privateers, which is nice. However, in 1802, after the Treaty of Amiens, the Royal Navy basically disposes of Alceste, Alert, and Salamine. They're gone. Again, that happens in 1802. Let's consider this fleet. Did we notice that by 1805 the Royal Navy's actually gone up to 160? So they're actually building more. Whereas the French are down to 71. The British have gone up to 136, third rates and above in commission. The French and Allies have gone down to 96. That's during the Battle of Trafalgar period. This is when I really shock people and go, yes, and if the French had won Trafalgar and had kept their fleet going on, the odds are they'd have still had a fairly damaged fleet. The French and Spanish had won it. And then they'd have bumped into the home fleet, or the various other squadrons, waiting for them. as they tried to go further north. Would they survive those battles? Why is it considered so important what Nelson does? Why is Nelson charging around like that? Is it because he's a glory hound? No. Because why do you want to win as far away from the UK as you can? Because if they come closer, you've got to relax the blockade. If you relax the blockade, you release the economic stranglehold you've got on France. If you release the economic stranglehold of France, you delay the longer win of the war. That is the naval power. So you don't want to have your blockade disrupted. So you want to fight your enemy as far away from the blockade as possible, so that those squadrons can do what they're supposed to be doing, blockading. That's why Trafalgar matters. That's why you're fighting the enemy as far away from you as you physically can. And that's possible because the French fleet is even shorter on frigates than Nelson is. In fact, woefully short on frigates. The small ships, which don't matter to battle, which I can joke about quite easily, you come face to face with a third rate, it's honourable to go, no, I choose life. It is honourable and fine to do so. But why? Why are they so important? Because they're the information, they're the presence, they are the communication for your fleet, they are all the things which actually make your fleet viable in wartime. They are the convoy escort for your supply ships, which for the Royal Navy is pretty darn critical. Because we talk about the ships going backwards and forwards to the UK, especially to Torbay, to be repaired and refitted there and get resupplies. But you don't imagine a ship in the age of sail, when they don't have refrigeration, stays on station for 23 weeks. 20 weeks was quite normal. Some did 23 weeks in the Channel Squadron at sea without receiving the supplies at sea. They do. Those supplies go backwards and forwards. They're usually escorted by a frigate in a convoy, or they go back. Also, the ship's line coming backwards and forwards would technically be sailing independently because they're supposed to get back to the fleet as quickly as possible, but would often twaddle along with a frigate escorting that convoy because that convoy was so important. But the ship line would be technically independent, so if necessary, you can, if the situation demands it, they're not expected to be there. They can leave the convoy and go to the fleet. So frigates matter. Losing frigates really matters. Wasting frigates, as Napoleon did, yes, he pulled off a great strategic maneuver. To what end? He goes in and hunts down Egypt. That's great. What would be more useful? Would it have been taking his large army, reinforcing the Spanish, and attacking Gibraltar? Let's be honest, he's an artillery officer. If anyone has a chance of breaking the rock, it might have been him. And imagine the Napoleonic Wars, the rest of the Revolutionary Wars, if Britain had lost control of Gibraltar. Imagine Britain not having as easy access to the Mediterranean as it had enjoyed. But no, he goes after Egypt. Because apparently he's planning on descending on India. How's he going to get there? Where are the ships going to come from to get him to India? Or is he just after Egypt because it's the prize? Either way, Perret does his best. Markham does his best. The trouble is, Perret is in a situation he's not really trained for and not really in a position to do anything about, because he doesn't have ships which are clean. He doesn't have ships which are properly maintained. He doesn't have ships which are properly equipped. And most importantly, all his ships are completely and mahusively outgunned, because there are 3 third rates bearing down on him. And he's a frigate force. and all the kind of sailing which he would need to do to try and get away from that scenario. And you can see he tries it when you read some of the little snippets you get of that 28-hour chase, the very few snippets you get. He tries every trick he can think of. But the thing is, his crews don't have the experience to pull those tricks off. Whereas the British ships, those crews do. And they do pull off tricks to keep up with him. And they do crowd on every bit of sail, every bit of chance they can to catch up with him. And to take out the French frigate force. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. And yeah, thank you for watching. As I do tend to end these things with a question now, mainly because I think you enjoy it. Seems to me all the response I get back from is, yes, enjoyed the questions. So the question I've got really is, how would you have conducted the Mediterranean campaign? What would your target have been if you had been Napoleon putting that fleet together? Would you have gone for Egypt? Would you have gone for Sicily, Naples? Where would you have gone? What would your target have been with all the force you amassed? Why Egypt? And again, thank you again for everyone's support for getting us to Canada. That was really, really cool. And as I said, we are planning another trip. We are working that one out and putting it together, mainly because the response has been so great, especially from the ships themselves. I have received such lovely emails from the people we met on the ships, and it's just been so nice to talk with them, and so nice for them to say we were of help. And that was just really cool. So thank you very much, everyone. And next week we have the Suffren class. Yes. The Suffrens. And this, of course, is going out as a long patrol on the 17th of June. But the battle is the 18th of June. So I've left it as 18th of June. Yeah. Hope you enjoy. Thank you very much. And take care.